What's going on YouTube, and welcome back to another one. Today we are re-ranking all 150 Jokers in Balatro. So I am now 200 plus hours in the game. I think I'm at like 230. We are post patch at this point, while the experimental patch isn't live. I think the changes that are being made are pretty final in terms of we're just testing and fine tuning. There might be some slight changes to the Jokers, but I'm going to rank them in this post patch world. You know, the last tier list, we had a ton of back and forth in the comments. I think even just immediately after that tier list, I had some differing of opinions than what you saw in that video. And now, you know, passing 4 or 5 gold stakes, a couple of gold stakes in the post-patch era, an absolute massive PB, a Balatro tournament later, my opinions on quite a few of these Jokers have changed dramatically. So it's time for a brand new tier list. And without further ado, let's jump into it. So we're going to start off with Jimbo Joker. I don't remember where I put most of these in the last tier list, if I'm honest. I think Joker is going to go in below average. I mean, actually, I'm going to put them in bad. You can use them very early game. It can supply you with that 4 molt to help you get through NT1. But outside of that, it does not have a ton of use. And as always, all of these tier lists, I am rating how useful are these Jokers. Stakes, white through gold, every single deck, and also taking into consideration, you know, competitive Balatro, high scores, personal best, and challenges. And, you know, you just do not use Mr. Jimbo Joker very often. Moving on, we have the suited Jokers. First, we have Greedy, then we have Lusty, Wrathful, and Gluttonous. And these got a little bit of a debuff in the patch. They're now only +3 molt, and I actually am also going to rank them slightly different. And you're probably wondering, why in the world would you do that? They all do the same thing. Well, it's because you really don't use diamonds super often. So I'm going to put the diamond version in the below average. I'm going to put Lusty, Wrathful, and Gluttonous all in the average tier list. These aren't great Jokers. One benefit is it's adding molt when you're scoring the cards, which means it's adding molt at the earliest possible scenario. You're not adding it up in your Joker slot, you're adding it when the card actually scores, which means if you have steals, it applies to the additive molt that these Jokers have. But the reason I'm also putting Greedy below is you just don't use diamonds, and that has to do with the uncommon version of the diamond Joker that we'll get to a little bit later. It's just not as powerful. And so very often you don't want to be building towards diamonds, which means, you know, Greedy Joker has a little bit less use in the game. But overall, these Jokers are still kind of average. Nothing too great, but, you know, not too terrible either. Moving on, we have Jolly Joker, adding 8 molt if a pair is played. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in below average. It's not fantastic. Again, it can be used very early on in the game. Then we have Zany Joker, which is +12 if you play a 3 of a kind. Same thing, below average. While it gives you a slightly higher benefit, obviously you have to have 3 cards of the same suit, which is just a little bit more difficult, and it's a little bit harder to find. Next, we have Mad Joker, which has kind of had a complete overhaul. This card is very different than the description you see on the top right of your screen. It is now plus, I believe, 10 volt, and if you play a 2 pair, and it's right there with these other ones where it can be used, but it's pretty not great because you need 4 cards, you need a 2 pair, and you're just not getting that big of a benefit. I would argue it's very close to the bad tier, but I am going to put it in below average. Just really don't love it. Then we have Crazy Joker, +12 molt if the hand contains a straight. Again, below average, not very good. I'm going to put in bad just because I don't use straight builds very often. Now, I know Balatro University, who is now becoming a close friend of mine, fellow content creator. I'm sure a lot of you guys watch him. He is showing that straight builds can be pretty darn viable in this game, and that is because Saturn, the planet card, scales very well for straights. However, if you're scaling that way with those planet cards, I don't think you need Crazy Joker. I don't think it's that great. I think if you are going towards that route of straight builds are more legitimate than we first gave credit to them, maybe you put them below average, but I actually don't think they are. I still, the way I've been playing, have it in the bad tier list, and I'm sure this is going to be a point of disagreement for some, but even though I've watched Balatro University, I've started playing a little bit more on the straight build side. I still don't find much use for it, and I'm still not playing straight builds very often. If I am picking up one of these Jokers, it's very early on, and I can easily play the pair or the 3 of a kind. it's much harder to find the straight. Along those lines, we have Droll Joker at plus 10 mult for a flush. It's kind of the same idea as it's a 5-card hand and I'm only getting 10 mult. It's not very good. Next, we have Slide Joker, which is kind of the chip version of the paired Jolly Joker, and it's bad. It's just not a good card. If you're playing on Plasma deck, this is kind of legitimate, but the plus 50 chips is really, really low, and it has to contain a pair. I mean, if I'm getting only 50 chips, I want to be able to play high card and get those 50 chips, so I really do not like it. And along the same lines, Wily Joker, you're getting 100 chips, which is much more substantial, but now you have to play 3 of a kind. Again, much harder hand to create. It's kind of annoying to get to, so just not a big fan. Clever Joker is now, I believe, plus 80 chips for a 2-pair. It's right there, same lines. It's not worth it to have to play a 4-card hand and you only get 80 chips. It's just not a good Joker that you're going to be going to very often. We have Devious Joker plus 100 chips for that straight, right in the bad tier, and Crafty Joker, 80 chips for a flush. I mean, this is awful tier. This is actually going to be your first awful card, and you're wondering why. It's because, again, it's a 5-card hand, and I'm only getting the benefit of 80 chips. That's just not going to cut it. It's pretty absolutely terrible. Next, we have Half Joker. Not a Joker I love, but a Joker that's kind of necessary. Very good for high card builds, pretty darn solid for pair builds because you only have to play 1 or 2 cards in those scenarios. It's arguably above average because it's giving you 20 whole mult. However, it does have a very hard counter in the boss blind of Psychic where you have to play 5 cards. It makes this Joker useless. And that one can come up very early on. I believe it starts in Ante-1. You can get it right away. So, you're going to use this Joker early on, but there's a hard counter in a boss that you can get early on. I don't love that dynamic. But in general, it's very useful to get 20 mult when being able to play just, a high card or pair build. Stencil Joker. We're getting into, a little bit more interesting effects here. Times 1 mult for each empty Joker slot. Look, in Balatro, I want to be using my Joker slots. So it's really hard to build around a card that requires you to not use them. Now, if you create copies of Stencil Joker, they actually do not count. So you can have 5 Stencil Jokers and get times 5 on all of them. Also, it can benefit from some negative Jokers. Since it is some kind of X mult, I'm going to put it in average because there's times you can kind of play around it and it can be utilized. And again, X mult is the end all be all in this game, in my opinion. It is very important to get that X mult. It's not easy to find Jokers that can create it for you. So, can be very powerful. Four Fingers is a utility Joker. All flushes and straights can be made with 4 cards, which makes straight flushes very easy to make, and I think due to that we can put it in the average. I know when Murphy did his Joker tier list, he had 4 Fingers very high up. I do not, but I do believe 4 Fingers is a very solid card that you can figure out a build. It's just not one I'm picking up enough to place it any higher than average. It does a very interesting thing. It does allow for the straight flush to work out. It allows you to play the flushes easier. But all in all, I just don't find myself using a whole Joker spot on it very often. That's because I've really moved away from flush and straight builds. I've much more, keen to lean on the high card pair build at this point in my Balatro career, or going for the full flush 5 of a kind type of deal. The flushes and straights have kind of moved and taken a back seat. Mime, when you're going for high scores, this is double S tier. This is one of the pieces of technology you absolutely need. But I think when you include all of Balatro, it's in the S tier for very good. It still can be absolutely utilized at high stakes, at all stakes, but it's a little less important than when you have it for the personal best. What this can do is absolutely jumpstart your economy with gold cards because it's allowing those to re-trigger. You can get points from it from utilizing it with something like Shoot the Moon that gives you mult for having queens in hand, or Baron, or steel cards. It's a very, very top tier Joker. It's very important. And the fact that it's uncommon, which means it pops up quite a bit, makes it even better to utilize. Next, we have Credit Card. And I've definitely moved away from utilizing Credit Card just because I'm leaning more on the economic Jokers to actually build an economy. Get to that $25 point or start getting interest every blind I play. I've definitely changed my thinking since the last time I made this tier list. And due to that, I think Credit Card has a purpose. It has a place in the game. It's not awful, but I actually have it below average. I really do not take it very often. And really, if I'm taking it, it's a desperate situation where I need a couple of rerolls and I need to find that final joker. Or you pair credit card with Vagabond. And what Vagabond does, we'll get to it in a second, is it creates tarot cards when you have $4 or less in the new patch. And that means you can kind of hover your economy around $0, create a bunch of tarot cards, get a little bit of money at the end of the round, and then use credit card to go into the negative and still buy stuff in the shop. So very specific combination there, and that's when I do utilize credit card. But in general, I'm building my economy. I don't want to go into the negatives, and I don't want to grab credit card. We have the Ceremonial Dagger, which is a decent scaling additive Molt Joker, but really to utilize it, you need a very good economy because you're destroying a Joker every single round to add the Molt because you get the Molt of double the sale value. This also does not get any kind of benefit if you use liquidation in the shop, which makes everything cheaper. It also makes your Joker's worth less. I think it's a below average card. You absolutely can make it work. It can go crazy. It can be a good additive Molt card, but more times than not, I am not picking it up. It is for very specific builds. It's hard to play around, and I'm just not a massive fan. Moving on, we have Banner Plus. Now, in the post-patch era, 30 chips per remaining discard, and pre-patch this was like S tier, I think, towards the end, but as we move to the post-patch era, it's gotten a little bit of a nerf, but it is still very, very good. I'm going to put it in the good tier. This is one of the fantastic chip jokers. Discards can be very important. They can be utilized to create tarot cards with purple seals. You obviously use discards to get the cards you want, but if you utilize your hands almost as a discard, Banner can be fantastic. Of course, if we're going to talk about like hard counters, the water, which you start out with 0 discards, is a very hard counter to Banner. And Banner doesn't work with something like Trading Card Joker, where you're going to use your discard to destroy a card, or Burglar, which takes away all your discards. But all in all, it's one of the best chip jokers in the game. And in my opinion, it has to go in A tier as a very good card. Mystic Summit plus 15 Molt when you have 0 discards, so this card does not work with Banner. And for that reason, I'm only going to put an average. Look, 15 Molt is 15 Molt, and really having the only condition being you have to use all your discards to get it is honestly rather solid. I'm not against this card. I think it has a place in, the early to mid rounds, but the fact that it, hard counters one of the best chip jokers is quite annoying. And all in all, I think there's better Molt options, but I do pick up Mystic Summit quite a bit because in a way it's similar to Cavendish. It's giving you 15 Molt. You have a prerequisite of having to have 0 discards, but more times than not you can get to that. Marble Joker adds a stone card to the deck when the blind is selected. This is going to go in below average. There's a time and a place for it. Works very well with hologram. Can work very well for a high card build where you're just trying to win. It's right on the edge of average and below average. I'll throw it in average because more times than not, if we're talking about, again, all stakes, you can beat almost every stake with a high card build, and Marble Joker is honestly pretty solid for those. And again, it works well with hologram, but when you're going for high scores, it's one I stay away from, so that's where it really balances out to right in the middle. I find it useful about half the time in the game. Stone cards can be very powerful. Those extra 50 chips for everyone played, again, work very well for high card builds where you play 1 normal card and then 4 stone cards, or even 5 stone cards, or pair builds where you can use 3 stone cards. These are good enhanced cards, and again, stone add 50 chips when they're scored. No matter, since they're stone card, they have no rank or suit, so they always add. Next, we have Loyalty card, and this is going in bad. We had a discussion literally on stream today. Some people believe Loyalty card is underutilized. I am not one of those people. I think in ×4 Molt, like I said, X Molt is important, and that's why I have Stencil and average. But if I'm only getting it once every 6 hands, unless I have 6 hands, that means I can't even get it once every round, which to me is useless. You need to be able to beat each and every round in Balatro. Loyalty card makes it very hard to do that. Of course, there are specific builds, or if you get both of the hand vouchers to have extra hands, you can get up to 6 hands, and then you could use it once around, and then it's like, okay, this is kind of like a interesting acrobat. But if you're not, it's not. If you don't have 6 hands, it's just not that valuable to me because you can't use it every round. So, maybe if it was ×10 Molt every 6 rounds, I would be much more keen to use it then, because then it's like, okay, maybe I have a build that doesn't need it every round, but when I absolutely do in a boss blind, I can make sure it lines up. But if I absolutely need it in a boss blind, times 4 isn't even that much where it's really going to be the thing that pushes me over the edge, in my opinion. So, not a big fan of loyalty card. I think it should be a common, and I think it should be at least times 5 molt. So, I still think we have a ways to go on a buff. 8 ball changed in the post patch era. Now has a 1 in 4 chance to create a tarot card when an 8 is scored. I think this is a really good card now because tarot cards are very important to the game. I'm going to put in the average tier though, because 1 in 4 is still, kind of hard to play around. If you build your deck to all 8s, and Balatro University just did this, I believe, on stream, it can be crazy. It can be very efficient, but again, that's a very specific build. I find myself picking up 8 ball usually for a couple rounds, making sure to get my 8s out, playing them, get a couple tarot cards out of it, and then, gain rid of it for a more useful joker, or maybe even a more reliable tarot generating joker. 1 in 4 is kind of low, works well with oops all 6s, but all in all, it's an average card. You're not going to be utilizing it a whole bunch. Misprint gives you plus random molt, anywhere between 0 and I believe 23. This one's average. It's kind of the same thought process as Mystic, except there is no prerequisite. The prerequisite is, you could get you can kind of get boned here, and you get plus 0 molt when you really, really need it. But you also can get the benefit of the plus 23 molt. It's a solid additive molt joker early on if you just need some base molt for most of your hands. Again, sometimes it's going to be 1, 2, 6, but quite a few times it's going to be in that 10 to 15 range, and then once in a while you get plus 23 and you one-shot a blind you didn't think you were going to be able to one-shot. Alright, here we're moving on to the next one. We have Dusk, which re-triggers all played cards on the final hand of the round. I have to put this in average. Again, this is another card similar to Mime, which if you're just talking about personal best and high scores, probably gets boosted up a little bit. But while re-triggering can be very important for high scoring, a normal run, it's not usually that important. And if it is kind of annoying that Dusk only triggers on the last hand played, which means you kind of have to throw away a few hands, set up it perfectly, and then on the last hand, you play your big hand with, let's say, a Bloodstone, which times his heart cards by 2 half the time. And you want to re-trigger every single one to make sure Bloodstone's hitting enough. Well, I'm also getting less economy now because I have to throw away hands, and I'm going to be playing Dusk on the last hand remaining, which means I get $0 from extra hands remaining. So you're talking about the majority of games, Dusk can be actually kind of a deficit if you need to rely on it. Of course, when you're going for high scores, and if you want to, throw a Dusk on to have one more re-trigger and you're going for that super high score, yes, this is fantastic. But most of the time, it's an average card. It absolutely can be utilized in like a Bloodstone build or something along that line where you're doing scoring to your playing cards with jokers or enhancements. But it hurts to not get an economy because you're having to utilize Dusk on the final hand of the round. Moving on to Raised Fist, adds double the rank of the lowest card held in hand to molt. I think since I've been playing more high card pair builds, you're able to use Raised Fist a little bit more efficiently because let's say I'm going to high card an ace, then I just get rid of all my low cards, usually end up with a 7, 8, maybe a 10. You double that, you're getting 14 to 20 molt, which is solid. it's right in line with Mystic Summit. Now, it works a whole lot better when you're not using a 5-card build, 5 cards being like a flush, 5 of a kind and that, because then you can't throw away your low cards and make sure that it triggers on a higher card. Interesting, Mime also works on Raised Fist because the way Raised Fist works is it's actually scoring. Like, let's say you have an 8 is the lowest in your hand, it scores that 8 and times it by 2, so it's plus 16 volt. And if you have Mime, it hits it again. So, interesting little caveat. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I swear the last time I used Raised Fist, that's how it worked. So, all in all, solid, decent joker. Chaos the Clown, 1 free reroll per shop. Going in average, there can be times where you're re-rolling and then Chaos pops up and the next reroll would cost $7, but I can buy Chaos for 4, get a free reroll. Then it's just free money. But all in all, we're not going to be holding Chaos the Clown too much in our hand. And once you get some of the reroll vouchers, rerolls are so cheap going into the next blind, you don't want to be holding Chaos because it's kind of a waste of space. Like, yes, instead of $3, I spend 0 and then I spend $4, but saving $3 on a reroll is not worth it when you can have economy jokers that are giving you much more than $3 per round. So I'd actually argue it's kind of below average, but I find myself using it so often when I'm just going through rerolls. It pops up. I get that free like $9 reroll for the cost of chaos, which is like $4. Um, so it sometimes can be a free $5, a free $6, $7. Who knows? So that's why I'm going to put it in average. Fibonacci. Each played ace 2, 3, 5, or 8 gives +8 mult. A pretty solid scoring card. And again, like I talked about with the suit jokers, it's nice that the score is happening on the card, because the fact that the scoring is happening when each card is scored, so the ace is scored, right? It gives you the +10 chips, and then it gives you +8 mult because of Fibonacci. Well, you'll have all that base mult when you get down to your hand and you're adding steals, or if you have X mult in your joker slots that are early on. So all in all, it's nice that it doesn't score on the joker slot. It scores on the card. It's pretty solid at +8. All in all, I think it's a really, really good additive mult joker. Steel Joker adds 0.25 mult for each steel card in your full deck. Really, really solid if you're going with a steel build. I think it can scale very quickly as an X mult joker. While chariots, yes, you can only make one steel at a time. You can use the full, you can use deaths to, make that process a little bit faster. And if you have solid tarot generation, this can scale to ×3 to ×4 very quickly. And that's just a solid ×3 to ×4 that's right there. I think it's an above average joker. And fun fact, this will not spawn until you have at least one steel card. So once you use a steel card, yes, this will start popping up in the shops. But until then, it's not going to waste spots in your shop because it doesn't populate until you have a steel card. So all in all, I think any card like that is, pretty solid. Lucky Cat, Glass Joker, which we'll get to later, also work that way. And the scaling mult is, pretty quick and I think fast enough for me. We have Scary Face. Played face cards give +30 chips when scored. I think it's above average, and that's because face card builds are very popular. It's pretty solid at +30, and there's very easy ways to re-trigger face cards, whether that be with red seals or the cards Sock and Buskin. So you can kind of scale those chips pretty decently quickly. I feel like I may be overrated by putting in B. I'm going to put it in C territory. It's a solid chip joker. It's not the greatest thing on earth, but it's solid. Abstract Joker, +3 mult for each joker card. More times than not, your joker slots are going to be filled, and this is 15 mult, and there's no prerequisite like Mystic. I'm really tempted to put it in the above average, but I am going to put it above average. If you have negatives, or if you're playing on black deck, this can scale to 18, 21 at times. So it can be a really solid additive mult joker, even if you don't have other good jokers, right? Like, you can just throw stuff up there to help kind of push Abstract to be a little bit more beneficial. And again, in the early mid game, +21 mult is really solid, especially if you get any kind of X mult behind that. So all in all, Abstract, I'm going to it a lot. Delayed gratification. Got a lot of flack for this in the comments. People are saying, there are ways to use this. It can be a very solid economy joker. And look, even to this day, when I play high card pair builds, I still love my discards. Ideally, I don't like playing builds where I can't use discards. But I understand when you're playing the game efficiently, especially at higher stakes, even in the new patch where maybe high card and pair builds aren't the end all be all anymore, you don't necessarily need the discards, and there's a lot of synergies for jokers that actually don't use discards. So it's a very solid economy joker. I'm going to put it all the way in the above average tier because it works so well with those pair and high card builds. It has a very good synergy with something like Green Joker, one of the top scaling additive mult jokers out there. Earning $2 per discard is fantastic. Now, as you get in the higher stakes, you start with less discards, which there's a little catch-22 there. But all in all, when I'm going for high scores, this is usually a go-to early on because I'm going to start with a high card build where I don't need to discard. You can start your economy. It's a good economic joker, and I definitely underrated it last time we did this tier list. Moving on to Hack. This is a card I absolutely overrated in the tier list. I'm going to put it in average. I think all re-triggering jokers have a place in the game, and they can be important, but it's not very often you're playing 2, 3, 5 builds And I found that out as I played more and more and more. I moved farther and farther away from them. And it's, well, 2, 3, and 5s are still solid. They work well with Fibonacci. They can work well with Hack. They can work well with Odd Todd. That was my demo brain kind of leaking into the first couple weeks of Balatro. And I think now that we're all the way here in April while I'm recording this, we're post patch. I just don't utilize that kind of build very often. It's still a solid Joker. It still has its place in the game. But, at most, I'm using it at an average rate like the rest of these. I would argue I use it kind of at a below average rate, probably in line with these Jokers. But I have to give a tip of the cap to the fact it's a retriggering Joker, which means, glass cards, again, Fibonacci, all that stuff, you can score very high with Hack. And it can really actually get you through, a middling like blue stake build where maybe you create a few glass 5s and, you add Hack, you're going to be fine. You're going to make it through that rest of the game. Pareidolia, all cards are considered face cards. Considering how many buffs there are to face cards in this game, Pareidolia can work extraordinarily well. I'm going to put it in the above average tier. I think it's an above average Joker. I mean, we look at Scary Face right here. We look at Sock and Buskin, which re-triggers all face cards. There's a bunch of other Jokers like Midas Mask, which only work on face cards. Pareidolia can, jumpstart your run and put you in a ridiculously good spot, either economically or from a point perspective. So I find it a card when I'm not going for high scores, I'm just trying to win a run. I'm actually starting to lean more and more on because it just has so many synergies in the game. Might be slightly overrating it here in the B category, even at the bottom of it, but I am going to put it in the B category. Gross Michelle plus 15 Molt, but a 1 in now 6 chance of being destroyed. The 1 in 6 chance was a nerf to Cavendish because, of course, Gross Michelle needs to go extinct for Cavendish to start popping up in the shop. But 15 Molt is 15 Molt, and heck, 15 flat Molt for no charge is absolutely fantastic. Again, similar to Abstract, similar to Mystic, but the one benefit, of course, with Gross Michelle is it's a starter to getting the best common in the game, which is Cavendish. So I have to give it one bump up over Abstract, even though it can go extinct on you, maybe at an unideal time. It is still a must grab in the game because, again, it unlocks Cavendish, the ×3 banana Joker. And again, while you have it, it's a pretty solid benefit at plus 15 Molt, and you do not need to do anything to get that. Moving down, we have Even Steven plus 4 Molt. When you play an even card, there's not a lot of even cards, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. So for that reason, it's in below average. I mentioned, like with Fibonacci, it's cool to have that scoring on your scoring cards because it can work well with a lot more synergies, but getting the plus 4 Molt on such few cards is just not great. I really rarely utilize Even Steven, and if I am, it's kind of a desperate move for just some kind of Molt in Ante 1 or 2. It's not a Joker I want to be playing, so for that reason, it's going to be put pretty low. In comparison, its chip counterpart, Odd Todd, I'm going to put all the way in the above average tier still. It's one of the better chip Jokers in the game. The fact that it works with aces, 9s, 7s, 5s, and 3s, especially the fact that it works with aces, I still stand by that aces are a fantastic card to build to when you're just trying to win a run. Now, if you're going for high scores, of course, everyone wants to go for those kings and those face cards, but we're just trying to win a run. Aces are a pretty good, reliable card, and Odd Todd pairs well with that. If you play 4 aces, for example, or 4 9s, 4 7s, 4 5s, 4 3s, it's 120 chips. That is a fantastic amount of chips to help balance your chips and Molt. It's a solid chip Joker. Banner is still better, but Odd Todd is right up there as a really good option. And Scholar, plus 20 chips, plus 4 Molt for those aces, as I mentioned. I utilize this a lot more in kind of those mid-stake runs. I would say blue, maybe even purple, a little bit less so when we got to orange and gold. But, this one's a hard one for me because I feel like I utilize it a lot, but I don't think it's a great Joker, so I'm going to put it right in the top of average. It's a solid Joker. Again, I think ace builds are very viable. The fact that Scholar exists is a big part of that. Again, you're getting the chips and the molt on the card. You don't need to wait for your Joker slot to be played. It's happening when the ace is scored. So, for those reasons, I do think Scholar has a very important place in the game. But at the same time, like I said, it's hard for me to put it in above average because plus 20 chips plus 4 molt is not the end all be all. But it is nice that you're getting all of that. You're getting some chips, some base molt, all in one Joker. Of course, you have to be moving towards an ace build though, which is rather restricting. So that's why it's going to be in average for me. Moving on, we have business card. Played face cards have a 1-2 chance of earning $2. Another really good face card Joker, this time of the economic variety, can work very well with Pareidolia. I'm going to put it in average. It's a solid economic Joker, but again, I've moved away from those 5-card builds. I'm using more high cards, more pairs, and business card doesn't really work very well with those high card or pair builds. However, it has a time and place in the game. The fact that you get 1-2 chance of $2, it's basically each scored face card is giving you $1. Think of it that way. Half chance at $2, it's going to average out. Your expected value is $1 per face card played, and that's, pretty solid value from a Joker slot. Economy is the end all be all in this game. That's really where I've kind of moved my head to, and this can be a very solid economic Joker. It's just you have to be playing a lot of face cards to really get the value out of it to match something like a delayed gratification, and that's not happening as often, so it's going in the average tier. Supernova. All right, you guys were right. I mean, there we go. You heard me said it. This is S tier. I had this maybe all the way in F tier. It is S tier. I misunderstood how Supernova can be utilized. As soon as I got to Gold Stake pre-patch, I was like, oh my god, I was wrong. Supernova is ridiculously important. But even past that, when you're going for high scores, oftentimes you're going to be playing that high card build trying to make lots of money. And Supernova is a big part of that for the first, 6 to 8 antes. And then when you move to Endless, you get rid of it. But it is solid, whether it's high scores, low stakes, mid stakes, or even high stakes, and even post-patch high stakes. There is a place for Supernova. And the best way to utilize this is play a bunch of high cards, play a bunch of pairs, get this up to 30, 40 molt. And having that base molt, you are set. You get yourself even something like a ramen that's just going to times it by 2. You're in a very, very good place. So Supernova is fantastic. It is one of the best scaling additive molt Jokers. It is the best scaling additive molt Joker because unlike Green Joker or Red the Bus where you have to build it yourself, right? You grab the Joker and now it starts scaling. You start scaling Supernova the minute you start playing. You start playing high cards. Maybe in AT1 you play 9 of them just because in the back of your mind you're like, I eventually want to go grab Supernova, and when I do grab it, it's already going to be at plus 27 molt for me because I've played 27 high cards. And that's exactly what happens with Supernova. It is the best scaling molt Joker in the game. And don't at me. I was wrong. I mean, past Zaino, don't at me. Anyway, moving over to Ride the Bus, another pretty decent scaling additive molt Joker. Another one I underrated. Now, high cards are very important in this game, but you can obviously avoid playing them for the duration of a game. I don't think this is as good as Green Joker or nearly as good as Supernova, but it's still above average because it's very easily scalable, especially with a high card or pair build or even a 3 of a kind build. You just focus on those lower tier cards. And then, of course, the abandoned deck. 1 in 15 decks, this card is the GOAT because you literally have no face cards. Space Joker, my beloved. I had some harsh things to say about it. I have definitely turned a corner. It seems like 1 in 4 means something different. Now that I have 200 hours in the game, all of a sudden 1 in 4 on Space Joker actually seems like 1 in 4, not 1 in 100. And for that reason, I do think it is a top tier C tier, bottom tier B tier, and I'm going to put it bottom tier B tier. We have literally a Space Joker emote on the Twitch channel, which you can check out twitch.tv/ZainoTV. We stream all the time. One of my favorite Jokers in the game now, and again, very useful in those high card pair builds because you play a lot of them, gives a lot of opportunity for Space Joker to proc and give you that level up, which is very valuable. I mean, every time it hits, it's a free planet card in a way. It's a free planet card towards, the hand that you actually care about and that you're playing a lot of. Moving on to Egg, gains $3 of value at the end of the round. This is a good Joker. This is very key for temperance, and whether you're playing, white stake, orange stake, or you're playing for high scores, you want to have temperance in your back pocket. Temperance is the tarot card that gives you $1 for, or it gives you the amount of money equal to all the sell value of all your jokers. Well, if I have a $40 egg, that's $40 for temperance, and I'll probably have the other $10 from my other joker slots, since the max temperance will give is 50. It is very important. And then it has some really, really cool synergies, like with the new and improved Swashbuckler, which can, make Swashbuckler one of the best additive mult jokers in the game. It can work kind of well with Ceremonial Dagger. If you get Ceremonial Dagger late and you need that additive mult, it's like, well, okay, goodbye my $38 egg, but hello 72 or 76 mult for Ceremonial Dagger. So this is a really, really good economic and utility joker to kind of either create emergency or synergies for mult, or more generally speaking, making temperance a lot better. Burglar, when the blind is selected, gain +3 hands. You lose all your discards. Oh my god, is this a good joker? I'm putting a good tier if you are a pair or high card player, which again is the most consistent way to win. I think still in the new patch at higher stakes, but especially mid stakes, and the best way to set up your runs long term when going for high scores. Burglar is fantastic because it also doubles as an economic joker. And you're probably like, what do you mean? Well, if I get +3 hand sizes or hands, and it takes me, let's say, 3 hands of high cards to win, and I start out with 5 normally, well, now I have 8. And now I have 5 hands remaining after I played the 3, and I'm getting $5 extra every single round because of Burglar, because I have more leftover hands. Now this applies to all deck sides. The green deck, which you actually get more of a benefit, but you get no interest, and also you lose the benefit of having the extra discards, but all in all, it still would be a plus positive. So Burglar, not only a really good joker for those pair and high card builds, just to make sure you have enough hands to score enough points, but also, in my eyes, is a very good economic joker, usually giving you an extra $3 every single round. Now we have Blackboard, ×3 mult if all cards held in hand are spades and or clubs. I think this is going in the good tier. It's pretty easy to play around. Obviously not perfect when you're playing 5 card builds like flushes, straights, or 5 of a kind, but you can still work around it. In ×3 mult, that is pretty darn reliable. Again, it's not as reliable, let's say, Cavendish, which just gives you ×3 mult, but it is very reliable. It has to go in the good tier for me. I am often relying on Blackboard to be my X-Mult joker at higher stakes. It works best with a high card build where I can play a high card and then just use the rest of the 4 card slots in my hand to make sure I'm using them on red cards, diamonds, and hearts, so I only have black cards remaining in my hand and trigger this. All in all, very reliable, very good X-Mult joker. This has a ton, 1,000,001 synergies. It can work very, very well. And then we have Runner. Gain +10 chips if played hand contains a straight. Obviously, if you're playing a straight build, this is a fantastic scaling chip joker. I do not play straight builds. I've played them when going after joker lists recently, again, because Saturn can scale very quickly. But all in all, I still find 5 card builds to be not great. And if I am going that way, I'm probably leaning flushes or leaning 5 of a kind more likely. I just don't think straights are that great. I'm going to put it in bad. I don't think it's awful, but it is not a good chip joker. Now, one benefit is it does start out with 20, and there have been times I have grabbed Runner, believe it or not, just to get that extra 20 chips for 1 round. Not a great economic choice, but sometimes 20 chips is 20 chips, and you absolutely need it to continue. Ice Cream. You start out with 100 chips, -5 for every hand played. This is going in the above average tier. This works very well when you need a quick little injection of chips to balance your mult early on or mid game, or even sometimes late game. This is also fantastic on Plasma deck, which balances your chips and mult, and having an extra 100 chips is incredible. Now, it goes away rather quickly, but you can usually play around it, and it saves you enough time to find a solid chip joker, like a Banner, or maybe if you're playing the certain way, like an Odd Todd. Moving on to DNA, if first hand of round only has 1 card, add a permanent copy to your deck. One of the best jokers, no matter what type of game you're playing, in my opinion. I really wanted to put it in double S tier, and then I told myself, like, no, we should keep double S tier very elite. And I was like, but I think it is in the very elite, so I am. I'm going to put it in double S tier. DNA is one of the best jokers in the game. Again, whether you're playing for high scores, playing stakes, being able to copy your end-all be-all card, whether that's, a glass Red Seal King, or a steel Red Seal King, or you're going after an ace build and you're just copying lucky card ace, and you're using lucky cards and lucky cat. Like, being able to copy cards in this game is very important. It allows you to build out your deck in one specific way. Not much else to say. It's a fantastic card, and I pick it up almost every single time I see it, unless my economy is in shambles and I'm playing at very high stakes. But even then, I usually try and find a way to play around it. Now, of course, if you're playing just a casual, high card build on blue stake, and you don't really need DNA, right? There's not really a reason for it, but it's so hard to pass up. Maybe there's not a reason for it, but if you have steel cards and you want to create more of those steel cards for your high card build, or you want to create more gold cards to create more economy, DNA is right there for you. It's going to help you achieve that goal. So I think it's a very, very good card. Moving on to Splash, every played card counts in scoring. There is a time and a place for Splash, especially if you have Fibonacci, let's say, and you're playing a high card build, but now you can throw in some extra 8s and 5s and 3s and 2s to get some extra mult. But I think it's a hyper-specific use case for Splash. Like, it has a time and a place. It's not completely useless, but you're not utilizing it very often. I'll put it at the top of the below average, as it has a cool effect. It can be leveraged, but I don't find myself leveraging it very often. Blue Joker, +2 chips for each remaining card in your deck. This one is going in the above average tier. Now, most of the time, I am trying to thin my deck to a specific card, like King. So my deck is getting smaller, which makes Blue Joker less important. Also, as you play more cards in your hand, Blue Joker is losing chips. But, it's a little bit weaker than Ice Cream. There's also the fact that it's there. It's not going to deplete itself anymore unless you're deleting cards. So, all in all, I think it's about equal with Ice Cream in terms of how important it is as a chip joker in this game. You want to have some sort of chips. You want to have chips, you want to have additive mult, and you want to have X mult. And this is a very good option to fill that chip role in your joker assignments. 6th Sense. First hand of round is a single 6 destroy and create a spectral card. Now, I gave a lot of stink about this card because it was rare. It is now uncommon. And I also think I was kind of wrong about 6th Sense. It's an easy way to create a spectral card that can go into that consumable slot. And why is that so important? Well, there's a legendary called Perkeo, which will take stuff in your consumable slot and create negative copies of it. Well, the only way to create negative copies of spectral cards is if you're on the Ghost deck and they can appear in the shop. Unless you can create one with 6th Sense or Seance. And 6th Sense is much, much easier to create spectral cards than Seance. However, of course, it is destroying the 6 as you do this, so you can only utilize it so many times unless you create copies of 6s. But I actually see that as a benefit. And I'll tell you why. Because it's doubling as kind of like a hangman. It's destroying a card I don't really want. It's giving me a spectral card. And you know what? Once I use it to destroy all my 6s, I get rid of it. So I've actually leveraged 6th Sense quite a bit. And this is going to be crazy. I'm putting it above average. My chat literally asked me today, what do I think is the most underrated card in the game lately? I think it might be 6th Sense. I think there's a lot of use cases. High scores with Perkeo and gain a spectral card in your consumable slot when you're playing something like the Plasma deck, and just thinning out the deck, gain rid of those 6s while gaining some kind of benefit of a spectral card. Constellation gains 0.1 mult per planet card used. This is a little bit slow to scale, and you do need an economy, but I do think it's a solid X-Mult option. I'm going to put in the above average. Don't think it's the end-all be-all of X-Mult, especially considering, again, how slowly it can scale. I mean, sometimes you're just not presented with enough planet cards, so maybe if you have planet card generation, like some blue seals, that could be pretty solid. But all in all, it's not the worst thing ever. And if you get it early enough in the game, it will be your X-Mult. You will be fine, and it's pretty darn solid. Hiker, every played card permanently gains +4 chips when scored. I'm putting this in average. I think it's a really cool effect, and maybe I just haven't used it well enough. I feel like you could use Hiker as your chip joker instead of, Ice Cream or Blue Joker, but I haven't been able to do it properly. I think part of it is when you're playing a high card or a pair build, you don't want to worry about which card you're playing. And this is obviously benefiting very specific cards. All in all, it has a time and a place. I think it is pretty solid. I just haven't been able to utilize it properly, and I think the ease of use of Hiker is not there. It's a hard Joker to master, and at the end of the day, I am going to put that a little bit into the equation of like how much do you have to really sit down and think to get the full purpose or full benefit of this Joker, and it's a lot with Hiker. And again, I think the benefit's there, but I think you aren't able to utilize it a lot because it's just so difficult to do so. Faceless Joker, earn $5 if 3 or more face cards are discarded at the same time. Well, again, this is fantastic with Pareidolia, as every time you discard 3 cards, you basically are getting $5. It's going to go on the above average. It's a very solid economic Joker. In most cases, you can discard 3 face cards, a couple times per round. That's $10. $10 out of a Joker slot is a good economic Joker. And for that reason, it's going to be here in the above average slot. Green Joker, +1 molt per hand played, -1 molt per discard. Again, I love my discards, but man oh man, this is one of the best scaling additive molt Jokers. Not as good as Supernova, but right below it here in the good tier. You pair this with Banner and you pair that with Delayed Gratification. You're not discarding at all. You have your chips, you have your additive molt, you have your econ. I call this like the triangle of success right here, these 3 Jokers, but outside of that specific synergy, it's just a very, very good added molt Joker. You can even utilize this with flushes or some other builds. Like, it's a little bit hard. Sometimes you have to use hands as discards, but it will scale pretty fast. But I actually think, again, it works best with high card builds because high cards actually aren't scoring that many, which allows you to play more hands and scale it a little bit faster. All in all, very good scaling additive molt Joker, and you need that base molt, and then you need your X molt. This next to Supernova is going to be one of your best choices for that base bolt. Superposition. I'm sorry, Balatro University, it's still awful. Yes, tarot card generation is key in this game. No, I don't want to have to play a straight that contains an ace to get a tarot card. And a big reason why I don't think this is reliable is you maybe are getting 1 per round. And that's because if you're playing... The difficulty of getting an ace straight is hard, and if you're playing straights, usually you're able to one-shot rounds, right? If you're really leveling up the straights, and then you're only getting 1 tarot card out of that, and I'm using a whole Joker slot on it. I don't know. I'd much rather have something like a Cartomancer that just gives me the tarot card, and I'll give the benefit of that to Balatro University. I'll put it in bad tier, but I just cannot figure out how to utilize superposition. I think it needs to have 1 extra benefit. I think it should allow you to wrap around straights, and I could play a 3-2 ace king queen. Then, if you give me that plus a tarot card, I will absolutely move this baby all the way to A tier. But maybe I'm not just skilled enough because I know Balatro University is able to use this and use it very well. I personally just stay away from it. I think it's kind of a very, very hyper-specific use case kind of card, and I already said I still don't play straight builds very often, and when I do, are they going to be the ace kind? I don't know. And do I want 1 tarot card out of my Joker slot for the chance that I do play the ace flush? No, I don't. I probably need other things out of that Joker slot, or I can have other, tarot generating Jokers that are much better than superposition, in my opinion. To-do list. Earn $5 if poker hand is changed. Poker hand changes on every payout. They now update this post patch that it also changes at the end of the round, or only changes on the end of the round. So now you're never stuck with straight flush, and you never get a straight flush, and it never moves. It is turned into a very, very solid economic Joker because, it turns on the pair. You can play a bunch of pairs and make a ton of money. And then, yeah, maybe for a round it's on 4 of a kind, but you can still maybe figure out a way to play 1 4 of a kind, still get some benefit out of it. The fact that it's giving you $5 means really per round I'm getting at least $5, but sometimes I'm getting $20 out of it. It's a very, very good economic joker. Cavendish, times 3 molt. It's a times 3 molt common card. Now, of course, Gross Michelle, 1 in 6 chance to go extinct now in the post-patch era, and it needs to go extinct for you to get a Cavendish. But, considering when the Joker does come, it is in the very good S tier. Times 3 molt. Fantastic. When we're talking about not PBs and we're personal best and we're just talking about winning a run, Cavendish is right up there. I would argue it's the best S tier Joker. It is so solid. Of course, it has a 1 in 1,000 chance of going extinct. I've never had it happen. Most people still haven't had it happen. It's happened to a few people. That's not something to stress about. At the end of the day, it is times 3 molt for free. There's no condition like Blackboard. There's no ramen where it's decreasing over time. You get times 3 molt. And, if you have that in combination with some additive molt, like we mentioned, like a Supernova, it's probably GG's as long as you're able to get some chips and you're getting a reliable hand. So, very, very good Joker. Right up there with it, card chart. Times 3 molt if poker hand has already been played. Now, this doesn't work very well for maybe like a 5 of a kind type build, but for pairs, high cards, even straights, flushes, 3 of a kinds, maybe full house builds, it's a really solid option. It's going up there in the A tier right next to Blackboard. I think these two are equal. I think card sharp's actually a little bit easier to utilize. And again, especially there's more scenarios where you're able to use card sharp. I'm close to playing S tier, but I'm not going to. But it is an A tier X molt card. Again, the key when playing any Balatro run, even when you're talking about super high scores, which Baron Mime builds, getting to that point, you want your additive molt, your scaling, your additive molt, your chips, your X molt. Card sharp's got you covered for that X molt. We have red card. Gain plus 3 molt when any booster pack is skipped. F tier. I don't skip my booster packs. If I'm getting a booster pack, yeah, sometimes I skip it, especially if it's the standard packs. But do I skip it enough to make red card valuable? And you also have to consider how much money you have to spend on those packs to then scale this. I think it's just as expensive as Ceremonial Dagger without as big of a benefit because there's so many packs I want to grab something out of. And then I have to make that choice. Do I get the 3 molt for red card or, do I get this really cool tarot card? Or do I get this really cool standard card? Or do I get this planet card? Most of the time, I want the benefit over the plus 3 molt. So I really avoid red card like the plague. I think it might be the worst Joker. There's a couple that will be vying for that position, but it is very far down on my list. I absolutely do not have a place for it. Madness, when the blind is selected, gain times 0.5 molt, except for boss blinds in the post-patch era, and it destroys a random Joker. However, if you're playing on Black Stake and you have Eternal Jokers, the Madness run can go crazy. Because if you have Madness and you have Eternal Jokers, those Jokers can't be destroyed, and you can actually just be getting free tons of X molt from Madness. Now, again, that's only half the game because Black Stake's halfway through the stakes, so I am going to put in average because it can, in my opinion, only really be utilized for half the time. You can do a Madness run without Eternal Jokers, but it's really, really, really hard to pilot, and I don't recommend it. I think there's better ways to play the game at those lower stakes. So, all in all, not the end-all be-all, but you can have some really, really fun builds, and it can be utilized with Eternal Jokers very well because this scales quickly, and it will be better than Cavendish in no time if you do have those Eternal tags on your other Jokers. Square Joker, gain plus 4 chips if played hand has exactly 4 cards. I used to be really against Square Joker, but now I think it is a very solid chip Joker. I think a lot of people would put in A or S tier. I'm not quite there yet just because it still scales so slowly. But if you do get it early and you are playing a pair or high card build, it is very easy to play just 4 cards every hand. Basically every single hand scale this by 4. Now granted, still, there's been times I've gone Square Joker literally second round, and by the time playing even high cards and a lot of high cards, by the end of the game, it's only at 200. Now 200 is a lot. That's a great chip Joker, but it took so long to get there. It just scales so slowly. It's easy to scale, but it is slow, and oftentimes you need to pair it with something like an ice cream until you can get it going, to get it to 80. You start with 16, but that means you still need, what is that, 64 chips? 64 divided by 4. I don't know. Now I got to do math. 64 divided by 4 is what, 16? 16 hands just to get it to a decent chip joker place. It's not necessarily easy. It's also not that hard. I don't know. I don't love it. I think it's high B tier. I do think that I much rather just stick with banner, but I absolutely see the point of square joker, and it has been a part of a lot of my builds of late, especially at higher stakes. Sans, if poker hand is a straight flush, create a random tarot card. Yeah, you're going in the awful tier. I said I came around on Sixth Sense, and I really have. I do see the benefit of Sixth Sense. Plus, you're deleting sixes, you're getting spectral cards. It's great. Straight flushes are not easy to play. You're talking about a extraordinarily hyper-specific build to play straight flushes. If you can, then cool. Yeah, make all the spectral cards your heart desires. But if you're able to already create straight flushes, I don't really need spectral cards. You're in such a good place if you're able to somehow get your build to be able to play straight flushes. And you don't really need to waste a joker slot on Sans. Very little times do I see a use for Sans in this game, even though it is now uncommon. I'm going to put it all the way in the awful tier. Riffraff creates 2 common jokers. This is above average. Very solid joker that creates more jokers. This can be utilized very well with something like Dagger, where you're creating basically free jokers for Dagger to kill. It can be utilized very good early on in the game, and you kind of keep cycling through the common jokers until you get ones you really want. All in all, I think Riffraff is fantastic early game joker, and it even has a little bit of a place in the mid-late game if you have some synergies like Ceremonial Dagger. Now we have to talk about Vampire and how they murdered one of my favorite jokers in the game. It no longer gives 0.2 mult per enhanced card, it gives 0.1. It has to be scored to get the 0.1 and take the enhancement off the card. And it's now rare instead of uncommon. For that reason, I'm out. It's all the way in D tier. This went from an S tier, A tier joker to absolutely garbage. I wouldn't be surprised if Local Thunk maybe fine-tunes the changes here, but for now, as of recording this on April 22nd, it is in D tier, and that is because it is just too many nerfs. If it moved to 0.1 but still took off the enhancements of all cards, not just scored cards, I would say, still very solid B tier. I'd even accept it being rare at that point, but you combine all the nerfs, and I am rarely ever grabbing Vampire, and I'm actually very disappointed to see it when I use a rare tag and I get Vampire. The only things worse are like the Order of the Tribe, which we'll get to in a bit. Shortcut allows straights to be made with gaps in the rank. This can be really solid for a straight build. I'm not playing straight builds very often. Could be utilized to actually make a straight flush build work, like we talked about with Seance. I'll put it in the D tier. I don't think it's a great joker. It's not the end-all be-all. I think Four Fingers is a better utility version of Shortcut, but you can use Shortcut to make the straight builds work. And if you want to go the straight build route, you are probably going to grab Shortcut at some point. It's kind of made for it. Hologram gains 2.25 mult per playing card added to your deck. This works very well with something like a DNA or a Marble Joker, or just a really good economy where you can add certain cards to the deck. Now, the hard part here is oftentimes my advice, if you're trying to win a stake or get a personal best, is to thin the deck to one certain thing, but there's still ways to thin the deck and move to one certain card while making Hologram work. I'm going to put it in the low above average. It can be pretty decent X-Mult. I think a little bit better X-Mult than some of the other options. Vagabond. It is now rare, but it now creates a tarot card if a hand is played with $4 or less. This is all the way in double S tier for me. I don't know if this is controversial, but the amount of tarot generation you can create with Vagabond is unmatched. In the finals of the Balatro Invitational Tournament, I don't remember if it was the finals or semifinals, but there was one round there. Maybe it was actually round 2. Me versus Balatro University. He went economy and then relied to get his tarots through packs and having a lot of money. I went double Vagabond, and I was able to curate my deck exactly to what I needed by like ante 7. Its powers and its ability to create tarots is ridiculous. I think tarot cards are extremely important in this game. And, I'm constantly preaching deck building, deck thinning, navigating that deck to be exactly what you need and what you want. There's no better card in the game except for Vagabond to do that. Now, DNA, of course, creates copies of your very great cards, but Vagabond's going to give you plentiful amounts of fools and deaths to make other cards into that perfect card, which kills two birds with one stone. You have another copy of your Red Seal King Steel, while also getting rid of a card you didn't want because you turn that other card into the quote-unquote God card. All in all, Vagabond is fantastic. Of course, it's hard to have an economy going, but the other part of this is with Vagabond, you get so many devils, and you're able to create a bunch of gold cards, which give you money at the end of the round. So you can get $25, $30, spend it all in the shop, and then do it all over again with Vagabond. I think it is one of the very best if you want to just win a run, if you want personal best, what have you. Next, we have Baron. Each king held in hand gives times 1.5 mult. While I do think this card is better for high score runs, I mean, it is one of the pieces of technology for high score runs. It actually can be utilized in most builds, even at higher stakes. And I'm going to put it, I want to put in double S tier so bad because of that. And I'm going to put in double S tier. I mean, if you want a personal best, unless you're going to go the idle sock and buskin type route of retriggering some card or like a tribulate and a sock and buskin, Mime Baron is the way to go. And just having every single king basically be steel with one card is reason enough to use it. I actually had a playthrough today where I got Baron early. We were able to make it work and give us the molt that we needed to just win the run. So I actually think you can utilize Baron very, very well in all your runs, not just your high scoring runs, but it is one of the GOAT cards when it comes to high scoring. It's got to be all the way up there in double S tier. It's really hard to pass up Baron unless for some reason you've already moved away from kings. But Baron is kind of the reason that we all push to make kings, because while kings also work with tribulate, more importantly, they work with Baron. And if you get that Baron and you have 10, 11 kings, you're probably set for the remainder of your run. Cloud 9, earn $1 for each 9 full in your full deck. Now, I often delete my 9, so this is rarely the full $4. It's oftentimes 3 or 2, and for that reason, I'm going to put in average. It's not a bad economic joker, but it is rather expensive at $6 and is uncommon, and I'm never adding more 9s, and that's the big thing. If anything, I'm deleting 9s, so for most of the time, it's below average, but I think a happy middle ground for the comment section would be to put this in the average tier. Now we have Rocket. You earn $1 at the end of the round, gains $2 when the boss blind is defeated. If you get an early Rocket, this thing can move to $11, $12, $13 per round very quickly. I think it is one of the GOAT economic jokers. I'm going to put it in the good A tier. And part of this is also the ease of use. How easy is it to pilot the run with Rocket? You can pilot this Rocket very easily. You don't have to think about it. You throw it in there, you let it just sit there, especially if you get it early, and all of a sudden, come Ante 7, you realize, like, oh my god, Rocket's giving me $14 at the end of every single round. It has just skyrocketed your economy, and you're all good to go. Obelisk. This is going to be another big change in terms of where I place it in my tier list. Times 0.2 mult per consecutive hand played without playing your most played poker hand. This is going all the way in bad. And this is one of the few X mult jokers I'm going to put in bad. And the reason is, all my advice to people is focus on one hand. Well, it is very hard to get Obelisk going if you're going to focus all your energy into one hand, and then all of a sudden you get Obelisk and you're like, okay, I'm never playing that hand again. It's just not easy to pilot. It is doable. I think in my literal, first how to win a Balatro run video, I did utilize Obelisk and win. But that was white stake. I think as soon as you get to higher stakes, you just can't afford to use Obelisk because you're so committed to the 1 or 2 hands. Let's say, again, you utilize Supernova and you got your high card to 47 times played. Well, yeah, of course, it's easy to pick hands that aren't high card and you can scale this to the moon, but are you going to get enough points from not playing high card to survive? And the answer is most of the time, no. So it's really hard to pilot. It's really hard to survive. I'm passing on Obelisk most times I see it. It's also pricey. It's rare. All in all, don't think it's a fantastic card. Minus Mass, all face cards become gold cards when they're played. It is now post-patch, all face cards become gold cards when they're scored. It's still a good tier Joker. Gold cards, I was underrating them. They are one of the best enhancements of the game. It, makes that economy flow. It gives you so much money and the ability to make every single face card gold, which, again, it used to be every face card played, but it's still easy to score most of your face cards to get this going. It's killer. Again, you pair this with Pareidolia, and all of a sudden you have a oops all gold deck where every single card is gold, and your economy is to the moon. Economy, again, is probably the best way to win a Balatro run because it allows you access to all these jokers. It allows you access to the tarot cards, and this is one of the best economic jokers. And the great thing about Minus Mask is you use it a couple rounds, you make 15 gold cards out of a bunch of face cards, and then you sell it. And now you have that economic benefit of Minus Mask going forward for the rest of the game without having the wasted Joker spot on it. I would argue, it's S tier. I just talked myself into that. It's a economic Joker that can benefit you for, 19 antes if you go into Endless, while only really, you having to use it for a couple of blinds. Luchador, sell this card to disable the current boss blind. I mean, this is the get out of jail free card. This is, oh my god, the plant's coming up and I only have face cards in my deck and I'm relying on the kings and the baron, and oh my god. For that reason, it's above average. There's a very clear time and the place for Luchador. A lot of times it comes up and you're like, god darn it, I need a different Joker. I need a scoring Joker. But this thing can save your life. It is one of the few outs you have when you are hard countered by a boss blind, and for that reason I think you have to put it in above average. And I've started utilizing it more and more. When I have a spare spot and I see it come up, I'm like, let me just put that in my back pocket. Probably gonna replace it if another Joker comes up that I can utilize, but you know what, I'll take a Luchador. A negative Luchador is fantastic. You kind of just have it sit there until you absolutely need it. But all in all, Luchador, pretty solid card. I think maybe it would be more fair to put an average due to how often you actually utilize it, but for all the times you saved me, Luchador, you're going in the B tier. Photograph. First played face card gets ×2 molt when scored. This is actually pretty darn solid and just adds to the list of incredible benefits you have as a face card. The face cards are the elites in this game, and this is above average. ×2 molt is still ×2 molt. Now, granted, this happens when the face card is scored, so it's happening before, let's say if you have a supernova, before that supernova gets scored. So it's not incredible, it's not a true ×2, but it is still pretty solid. And oftentimes through planet cards you have, a decent start, even if you're playing high card. You're playing high card, you can get that up to 8. This is basically a free 8 molt, and there's ways to re-trigger with Hanging Chad or with Sock and Buskin, and that's where Photograph, I feel like, really takes off. I'm tempted to put it in top of C tier. Probably will put it bottom B tier for that reason. Gift card adds $1 of sell value to every Joker. Another card that I had to go through the comments of my last tier list and apologize for. This is even better than Egg. This is S tier. This does all the things I spoke about earlier about Egg and Temperance and making all your Jokers worth more. Benefiting Swashbuckler, and it does it better because it's actually adding $5 per round if you have all 5 Joker slots, plus those consumables. I recently had a Pluto that was worth $15 because I was holding it with Observatory and Gift Card was constantly buffing it, and I totally forgot. I went to click on it to use it, and I was like, oh, I'm going to sell this. It's a $15 Pluto. I'll just get a Pluto in another pack. All in all, it is a GOAT tier economic Joker. It can max out your Temperance with Jokers you actually want to use. So the thing is, the Egg, takes all the value when you have Egg. But Gift Card, if I have a Baron Mime build, will make Baron and Mime worth $25. And now all of a sudden I can sell Gift Card and still get my $50 from my Temperance. My Swashbuckler, is still giving me plus 50 molt from these two. It is kind of similar in the way of Minus Mask, where you can eventually get rid of Gift Card and it still gives you the economic benefit that it was. Turtle Bean, plus 5 hand size, reduces 1 per round. This can be a get out of jail free card. This can help you with high scores. I think all in all, Turtle Bean is a good above average Joker. It has a lot of places in this game. Hand size is king. It helps you get the cards you want out. It can help you, especially if you have, Shoot the Moon or Steals, you have things that score in hand. Obviously, the benefit is self-explanatory: more cards in hand, more points. But it also can double as an economic joker, like we just talked about. Gold cards are very valuable. You get more gold cards in your hand with Turtle Bean. Of course, its benefits come to an end. It is a consumable food joker, but I find myself utilizing Turtle Bean for a couple runs very, very often in runs, no matter if I'm going for high scores or, middle high stakes. Erosion, +4 molt for each card below 52 in your deck. I think this is actually a B tier additive molt joker. Oftentimes, again, I'm a big proponent of deck thinning. Early on, my deck is probably at 48, 46, and this is already in a good spot where it's matching or better than Abstract Joker. So I think it's right there with Abstract Joker. Now, of course, I have to do something. And there's times maybe I'm utilizing DNA and my deck's actually kind of fat and I can't use Erosion. That's what's keeping it from, A tier, S tier, like a Gross Michelle or something. But all in all, Erosion, usually very, very good card and can give you that solid base molt you need in your run. Reserved Parking, another elite face card joker. There's so many jokers that benefit face cards. Each face card held in hand has a 1/2 chance of giving $1. Now, it's now $2 from business card, but the fact that it's held in hand, and oftentimes I do want to hold my face cards in hand due to Baron, Mime, Shoot the Moon. This is a good tier joker. This is a fantastic economic joker that works very well with Mime. It works very well with golds. It works very well with high card builds and gives you plenty of money per round. The dream is, you have a 8 hand size, you're playing high card. The rest of the cards in your hand are face cards. This is averaging $3 to $4 every time you do that. You can play multiple hands per round. If you have a Mime, you're now doubling the value of Reserve Parking, so it has a really good synergy there. All in all, Reserve Parking is a fantastic economic joker. And speaking of fantastic economic jokers, Mail-in Rebate, which now earns $5 for each discarded rank. The rank changes every round, but the rank is dependent on your deck. So if you have all kings left, this will only proc on kings, which means you have a deck of 30 kings. Well, you could discard most of them because you probably only need to play one hand, and you are getting tons of money. And of course, Blueprint and Brainstorm could copy this, and that could benefit. This is an S tier economic joker. The amount of money you get out of this when you modify a deck is fantastic, but even in unmodified decks, I was just using Mail-in Rebate. I got it right out of the gate, blind 1 in a normal 52 card deck, and I still was oftentimes getting $10 to $15 out of it per round. So all in all, Mail-in Rebate is a fantastic joker now, especially that it moved to $5 per each discard. Shoot the Moon, or To the Moon. I have to apologize on this. I rated you way too low. Earn an extra $1 of interest for every $5 you have at the end of the round. Basically doubles your interest. I actually did misunderstand it when I first placed this. This is absolutely good, borderline S tier economic joker. I'm going to put it right next to Rocket. Very easy to pilot. You don't have to think about it. Now, the benefit of Rocket is, I think Rocket works very well with Vagabond, where I could spend all my money and then still get $14 at the end of the round, versus To the Moon, you have to have that, good base economy to then build off of and build the interest. They're still, right there. They're both A tier, but one is definitely better, or one is a little bit easier to pilot in Rocket. One is a little bit more dependent on already having some good money into the Moon, but this has a, higher ceiling in my opinion. Hallucination, 1/2 chance to create a tarot card every time you open a booster pack. This, doubles the value of basically all booster packs in my opinion. This is an S tier joker. Tarot cards, again, this is why Vagabond's double S tier are almost the end all be all in this game. The fact that every time I open a pack now, I have a chance to get a tarot card. Usually I open both packs in most shops, considering, or as long as my economy's in an okay spot, I'm getting a single tarot card no matter what. Even if I didn't get any Arcana packs, I still am able to create a tarot card due to Hallucination. This, of course, works very well with the Oops All Sixes, or works very well with a Blueprint or a Brainstorm. All in all, Hallucination, fantastic tarot generation, in my opinion, much better than something like a silly superposition. Sorry, I had to give one more shot to superposition. Fortune teller plus 1 mult per tarot card used. You've heard me wax poetic about tarot cards throughout this tier list, so I'm obviously using quite a bit of them. I'm going to put it in above average. I think my tarot card usage is usually around the teens by the time we get to, ante 3-4. That's decent base mult. It's not going to be quite as good as, Green Joker or Supernova, but the one good thing about Fortune Teller is it could already be built up. So if you already used 18 tarot cards and then let's say Gross Michelle goes extinct, and you're like, oh my god, I have no base mult. Well, Fortune Teller pops up. I don't need to build towards it. It's already at plus 18 from the 18 tarots I used, and can be pretty easy to scale, especially if you have like Emperors or Fools, which, count as using a tarot card, which then creates more tarot cards, which you are then using, and this thing can scale ridiculously fast. Juggler plus 1 hand size. Again, there's a lot of good builds, whether you're going for high scores or just winning, that utilize cards in hand, and plus 1 hand size is fantastic. There's no catch-22 here. It's just you get an extra 1 hand size. This is going to go in above average. Drunkard, the plus 1 discard. This one's average for me. It can be useful, especially in something like delayed gratification, gives you an extra $2, or something like mail-in rebate, just to make sure you're able to discard all the cards to get the most amount of money. But I oftentimes don't have a place for it. I'm actually going to put it in D tier. It's not the end all. It's not a bad card, but it's just really hard when you look at how many Jokers, you could utilize for more practical things, in my opinion, and better synergies. It's hard to justify a Joker spot on Drunkard. Stone card. This Joker gains plus 25 chips for each stone card in your deck. This can be, the best chip Joker in the game. It's just very hard to get going, and usually it's only getting going if you already have the Marble Joker. So I'll put it right next to Marble and put it in that C tier. Now, granted, this thing is not going to pop up in the shop unless you have at least 1 stone Joker, but oftentimes you do just have 1 stone Joker, and then you're like, well, you popped up, I'm not going to utilize you for 25 chips. I'm also not going to probably be building more stone cards, and you just toss it away. That's how it is most of the time. However, the fact that it scales so well and has such a good synergy, I'm still going to put it in average because, as I've said a million times, pair high card builds. It's the meta, and they can utilize stone cards very easily. And, you build 4 or 5, all of a sudden this, can be your solid chip Joker in your Joker slot. Gold Joker, earn $4 at end of round. This is going to go in the B tier. It's going to get points for being extraordinarily easy to pilot. You get $4 at the end of the round. You don't got to think about it. People are going to say, why is this above Cloud9? Well, 1, it's $1 cheaper to buy from the shop. And 2, again, I delete my 9s. This is rarely worth $4. This is most of the time for me worth 3, 2, 1, or 0. Golden Joker is always going to be worth 4. Now, of course, I could scale Cloud9 bigger, but why would I want to make more 9s except to hope that I get this 1 economic Joker? Look at how many good econ options we have. We have delayed gratification. We have Golden Joker, Rocket, To the Moon, mail-in rebate, gift card, Midas Mask, Burglar, in a way. I'm not going to build 9s just in the hopes of getting this Cloud9, and that's why I'm just trying to answer the comments already. This is why Golden Joker is above Cloud9. Lucky Cat gains 0.25 mult, I believe, now per Lucky that's successfully triggered. This got a buff in the latest patch. I think it is C tier. I think the real buff to Lucky Cat is the fact that Magician now works on 2 cards. So every time you get a Magician tarot card, you're able to create 2 Lucky cards, which means more Luckies that have the chance to proc, which makes Lucky Cat a lot more viable than it was in the previous edition. I think I had it all the way in the bad. It is now an average X mult Joker card. Baseball card. Uncommon Jokers each give times 1.5 mult. There's a lot of useful uncommon Jokers, and for that reason, you're going to get put all the way in the good tier. Times 1.5 mult is not fantastic, but there's quite a few times that 3 or 4 of my Jokers are uncommon. When you times 1.5 to the 3rd power, now you're talking about baseball card is basically X 3.375, which is much closer to Card Sharp and Blackboard, and for that reason, it is going here in the A tier. And I just realized that when I did the math really quick in Google, you guys saw that in the top right, and that's embarrassing that I didn't know what 1.5 times 1.5 times 1.5 is, but now you know that I didn't know. The Bull Joker. Plus 2 chips for every dollar you have. If you have a good economy, this is the end-all be-all of chip jokers, and for that reason it's going in the good tier. As I focus more on economy in my recent builds, the Bull Joker has more and more of a reason to be utilized. If you're just going for a win, again in like Orange Stake, you work on economy, you get Supernova. Even if you have like $30, the Bull is giving you those 60 chips, and then you're at a solid base and you can work on getting your economy higher and higher, and that's going to scale your Bull higher and higher. Diet Cola. Sell this card, create a free double tag. This is going in the B tier, and really it's because it doesn't waste a Joker spot. You buy it and sell it and you have a double tag. And the only time you can't really utilize this Joker is when all 5 are full and you cannot afford to sell one. But all in all, I love the fact that this Joker is kind of a quick hit. Like, you don't need to hold it to get a benefit, and for that reason, even if the benefit isn't the greatest thing on earth in the double tag, I think it's pretty solid and it's worth the B tier. Trading card Joker. The first discard of a round only is one. If the first discard of the round is one card, destroy it, get $3. S tier Joker. You get 2 deck thin and you get $3. That's economics. That's deck thinning, deck building. Beautiful. Absolutely love this card. This is fantastic. Again, no matter what stake you're playing on, or if you're talking about high score runs, trading card is there for you. It is a fantastic tool. It is half a hangman, and you're getting paid to use half a hangman every single round. Now, yes, it takes a Joker slot, but I can find a way to make this fit. And oftentimes I have this replace my economic Joker. Usually my econ's in an okay spot. Again, this is still going to give me $3 per round, so it's not like it's not giving me any economic benefit, but I'm getting the benefit of every single round my deck is going down by 1, which is fantastic and has very good synergy with something like Erosion. Flash card. This is a card I've seen Balatro University utilize very well. I utilize it not nearly as well, and I'm going to put it in average. I think there's just much better scaling additive Molt Jokers. Now, if Flash card gave me +2 Molt per reroll I've used in the shop, including the shops before I use this card, similar to kind of how Supernova gives you the Molt for all the times you use that hand before you got Supernova, this would be A tier, S tier. But it only counts, after I get Flash card. Now it starts counting every time I reroll. And for that reason, I think it's average. Like, you can use it, you can get some good base Molt out of it, but it uses a lot of your economy and it doesn't scale particularly fast. Popcorn. +20 Molt, -4 Molt per round played. Just a very good early base Molt Joker. It's going to go in C tier. Utilize the heck out of it. Good base Molt. We got Pants. Gains +2 Molt if played hand contains a 2 pair. This is a pretty good scaling additive Molt Joker. I think it's the bottom of the above average tier. It scales decently well. Not quite as good as Ride the Bus, for example, but not enough to have a whole tier difference in my opinion. And the great thing about this is, you can play a bunch of 2 pairs and then you can move off of that and you still have the benefit of, the +30, +32 Molt. Ancient Joker. Each played card with suit gives times 1.5 Molt. This is fantastic to just kind of win a run, in my opinion. I definitely underutilized it, I think, in my first tier list in the first couple weeks of the game. I still don't go to it a ton, and one downside to Ancient Joker is the fact that it does not take your deck in consideration. So if you have no club cards, it will still sometimes proc for clubs. If you're playing checkered deck, for example, you can get diamonds or clubs. It's just going to randomly select one of the 4 suits. However, it's not the worst thing in the world, and as long as you're not playing on checkered deck, you have an even amount of all the suits, or maybe erratic deck, you can make Ancient Joker work very well, and you kind of just move yourself into a flush build and you'll look for whatever suit it tells you to look for, and you're probably fine, because times 1.5 Molt on 5 cards is a ton of X Molt, especially if you level up the flush. Ramen. Times 2 Molt, lose 0.01 per card discarded. Well, in a lot of these builds that we've talked about, like the Green Joker one or Delayed Gratification or Banner, you don't discard a ton, and Since I have a lot more builds in my arsenal that don't discard, I've moved it to kind of the above average, borderline A tier. I'm going to put in the higher, B tier. Solid X-Molt at 2, and there are ways to make sure that it doesn't deplete too fast. But, I still don't utilize it nearly as much as I would like a Blackboard or Card Sharp. Plus the fact that these are times 3. This starts at times 2 and then gets depleted. These are always going to be times 3 as long as I can make them proc, which is not too difficult. Walkie Talkie, each played 10 or 4 gives plus 10 chips or plus 4 molt. This is just a worse version of the Scholar, but it does count on 2 cards. I'm going to put it in the bottom of average. Of course, as we spoke to earlier, it's awesome that it's happening on card, the plus molt and the plus chips, but 10s and 4s, not the greatest cards in the world. This can be very good to win a run and just give you the little bit of base chips and molt you need extra, but I've definitely moved away from it in recent weeks. Seltzer retriggers all cards played for the next 10 hands. This works very well with something like Ancient Joker, right? Because there's no, like Sock and Buskin or Hack, it only retriggers a very specific set of cards. This retriggers everything for 10 hands. If you use skips properly, you can make this last to the end of the game and just give you the W. And for that reason, I think it's all the way in A tier. And then we can also speak to the fact that it can be one of the pieces of technology to give you that huge high score if you utilize this with like the Idol or Tribulette and scoring X-Molt jokers that score on the hand. Moving on to Castle. This joker gains plus 3 chips per discard of a suit. This suit changes every round. Now, this suit is catered to how much of that suit you have left in your deck, and for that reason, I will put in the bottom of B tier. I actually really don't utilize Castle as much as I once did because similar to Square Joker, it just takes a while to scale. Now it does scale faster, but still can take a little bit of time to scale, and a lot of builds rely on, not discarding. In Castle, obviously you need to discard a lot, so it's one I don't use as much. It's still a very solid, B tier chip joker. It's just not quite what I thought it was originally. Smiley Face now gives plus 5 molt per scored in the new patch. For the face cards, as if face cards needed more things to make them really good. In general, this is a top C tier card. It is a slightly better version of these suited molt jokers. Not quite incredible, but very solid. Campfire, this joker gains 0.5 molt. Well, now it's 0.25 molt per card sold. Still a good X-Molt option. Of course, you need the economy to really make it work, but I would argue it's a tier below Card Sharp and Blackboard for me. But the fact that it can scale infinitely, like if you really want to, it could be X10 if you need it, makes it its kind of own unique thing. It's just, it can be hard to make work. I'll put it in the bottom of A tier. I think for that reason, it deserves to be in the same tier as Blackboard and Card Sharp, but it is a lot harder to pilot. There's a lot more to think about when you play Campfire, and the fact that it resets every boss mon, you have to keep that in mind. You always need to have good economics when playing with Campfire. Golden Ticket. Played gold cards now earn $4 when scored, which means with Golden Ticket, it's actually worth it to play your gold cards instead of to keep them in hand. It doesn't change much for me. It's still a D tier card. Like, if I made my entire deck gold with Midas Mask and Paradolia, or maybe even just Midas Mask and I'm just playing face cards, like, yeah, it can be worth it. But more times than not, you really don't need it. Moving on to Mr. Bones. Prevents the death if chips scored are at least 25% of the chips required. That's amazing. It's really been saving my butt recently, whether it's high score runs or whether it's, orange or gold stake. It's even won a gold stake run for me. This is going in the good tier. This is, we talked about Luchador being get out of jail free card. This is literally get out of death free card. If you have a Joker spot open, or if you're on the final stake and you just want to beat gold stake, this literally assures a victory as long as you can get 25% of chips, which there's a very high likelihood that you're able to do that if you're there in the first place. Moving on to Acrobat. This is one my opinions have changed quite drastically. I used to have a lot of respect for it. But now the fact that you have to use it at the end of your hands, similar to everything I said earlier about Dusk, applies to Acrobat. And, I think I'm going to switch these two. I'm going to put Dusk in the B tier, Acrobat in C tier. And yes, Acrobat can save you, but it's going to ruin your economy. Same thing with Dusk. It can save you, but it's going to ruin your economy. Maybe they should be in the same tier. They're both going to be in B tier. There we go. Decided. I'm going to stop going back and forth on it. But yeah, the times 3 molt on the final hand played is solid. Like, it can be helpful, but again, it's really hard to get an economy going if that's what you're relying on. And if you're using a Joker as just a, like, fail-safe, I think there's better fail-safe options. Moving on, we have Sock and Buskin, one of the crucial pieces of technology for high score runs. I'm going to put it in the S tier. It retriggers all played phase cards, something that can work very well with Pareidolia, but it is one of the best cards in the game. Works very well with Tribulate, which, gives ×2 to all kings and queens. Works very well with the Idol if you made your whole deck King of Hearts and, the Idol procs. Also can work very well with the new and improved Bloodstone, which gives ×2 molt for all heart cards, 1 every 2 times. So this retriggering card is one of the best in the game. It's very close to double S tier in my eyes, but just a little bit below because there's quite a few runs where you don't need it and you're not going to pick it up. Swashbuckler now gives your molt is the sell value of all jokers, no matter where the jokers are, so you no longer need to place this all the way to the right. You have this weird thing where you have additive molt on the right, but you want that additive molt to be before X molt, but then it's not going to get the most out of the sell value. That's all gone. Swashbuckler is just going to give you the molt of the sell value of all your Joker slots, and you can just put it all the way to the left. It is now, in my opinion, a very good base molt Joker. It's going to go in the above average B tier, and again, has a very good synergy with something like Gift Card or Egg. Troubadour, +2 hand size, -1 hand per round. Hand size can be king. I'm going to put this all the way in the A tier. Some people may not agree with that, and the -1 hand does hurt your economy, and I have made that a big stress point, but having 2 bigger hand size is massive. Those two cards can be a gold and a steel, and oftentimes if you're willing to buy Troubadour, they are, and that's why it's in A tier, because you just made up that economic difference and gave yourself scoring. Or, you just give yourself scoring with 2 more steel cards, or just give yourself the economic benefit with 2 more gold cards. This thing is fantastic, especially if you have Mime and you're playing and utilizing the cards in your hand. Next, we have Certificate. When a round ends or begins, add a random playing card with a random seal to your hand. Seals can be very valuable, and I'm going to put this in the B tier because I love grabbing Certificate and using it for like 3 or 4 seals. It also has a huge, synergy with Hologram, which in that case you just keep it and you keep scaling Hologram. But, gold seals are valuable. The new blue seals are very valuable. Purple seals are ridiculously valuable, being able to create tails by just discarding. And then red seals can be those, super massive high score things, but they also can just straight up benefit you when trying to win a run. So all the seals are extraordinarily beneficial. Of course, it can give you cards that you don't really want. At the end of the day, I think now, especially with the buff to blue seals, it's kind of in turn buffed Certificate, because every card to get out of Certificate probably has a pretty solid purpose for me. I can just create a few of them and then sell it. Smeared, hearts and diamonds count the same. Spades and clubs count the same. For me, this is a top tier average Joker. Like, there are definite synergies it can be utilized with, but not enough that I'm willing to put in B tier, and I'm really not utilizing it extraordinarily often. Throwback, 0.25 molt for each blind skipped, and it starts at, obviously 1x. Yeah, that is fantastic. I don't think this is great for high scores, but this is fantastic to just win a run. Now, you don't want to skip a ton of blinds, but there are times if you have, what you need, you can skip enough that this equals, times 2.5 or times 2.75 or even times 3. And now you don't need to do anything like with Card Sharp or Blackboard. You're just getting that flat times 2 to times 3. You were able to skip a couple blinds. Yes, you miss on the shop or the economic benefit of those, but you do get something from skipping the blinds. And of course, you're getting the extra molt from Throwback. I've had quite a few runs, especially I would say in that purple blue stake range, where I got where I needed to go with my jokers, and I basically just skipped to the end of the game and buffed throwback to the point where the boss mine was easy for me. So I think this definitely has a lot of use case in just winning a run, a little bit less so when we're going and speaking to Endless. Hanging Chad got a massive buff. It now re-triggers the first played card twice, which works very well with something like Photograph, but just works fantastic in general. This is all the way in A tier now. Whether you're winning a run or you're going for high scores, having the first card trigger 3 times, once normally and then 2 because of Hanging Chad, is insane. You're able to really get out of jail quite a few times by just playing a glass card first, and now the fact that that's timesing by 3 times, you're timesing that base score now by 8 because of Hanging Chad. It's ridiculous. Also works very well with magic cards, or lucky cards, that is. Being able to proc that lucky card to either hit the plus 20 mult or hit the plus money. Hanging Chad is fantastic now. That buff was substantial. Now we're getting into the uncommon suit jokers. We have Rough Gem, which gives $1 play for every diamond. This is it's a solid economic joker, but we're moving away from diamonds because there's such better options, so it goes in D tier. Bloodstone, it got a buff. It is now 1 in 2 chance for played heart cards to have ×2 mult. This is now an S tier joker. It is that good. An Oops All Sixes, 1 Oops All Sixes makes this into a permanent idol for every single heart. But even without an Oops All Sixes, you have something like a Sock and Buskin or a Dusk or a Seltzer. Once you trigger those cards twice, and let's say you play a flush of hearts, that's 10 opportunities. You're probably getting 5 ×2 mult. You're in the clear. You're probably good to go. You don't need base mult anymore. You just need some extra X mult in your joker slots, and you're going to win that run. My first gold stake win on the new patch was with Bloodstone, and my first super high scoring run in the new patch was with Bloodstone. This is a great card now. Arrowhead gives plus 50 chips for every spade. Very solid chip joker in the game. I'm going to put it in the B tier just because it's so reliant on having to play spades. And there's, solid chip joker options elsewhere. But at the end of the day, getting even in a pair or high card build, you can, find your spades, and it's going to basically give you equal to that of what a full ice cream would give you. So, honestly, solid. Pretty solid card. Onyx Agate gives you plus 8 mult for every club played. This is just a better version of the common. I'm going to put it in above average, but very low in the above average. So plus 8 mult, again, happening on the card, similar to Fibonacci, is solid. But I just don't often find myself playing around club cards, and I don't find myself playing a lot around flushes anymore. So that's why this and Arrowhead have been kind of downgraded in my mind a little bit, but they still are above average cards. Glass Joker got a buff to times 0.75 mult for every glass that breaks, and glass doesn't seem to break that often. It's 1 in 4, and you have to have a lot of glass to really utilize this card. I'm going to put it in average. As mentioned before, this card, similar to some of the others, will not show up until you have at least 1 glass card, which is a nice benefit. But when it does start showing up, I'm not utilizing it too much. Showman. Apologies to Showman. I wasn't familiar with your game. I rated you a little bit too low last time. Now, Showman, I still think does not have a place when you're just trying to win a run. And for that reason, it's still going to go in below average for me. But when you're going for that major high score, and you want many copies of Baron, or many copies of Mime, or many copies of Blueprint, or DNA, or Brainstorm, Showman then has a place in the game for ultra high scores. So there actually is a place in the game for Showman. In my opinion, it's just very hyper specific. It's for us trying to break the game. It's not necessarily for most people trying to just win a run. Flower Pot ×3 mult if played hand has a scoring diamond, club, heart, or spade. This one is hard to pilot. It is ×3 mult. And for that reason, I still want to put it in above average as a joker. But I am going to put it in average because I just never grab it anymore because it's so hard to push for. And again, often I'm moving my deck to very specific cards. and I'm not moving it in a way that I'm going to have one of each of the suits. This does give credence to creating some wild cards, but you need a lot of wild cards to make Flower Pot work. So all in all, it's not that high up there for me. Blueprint copies the ability of the Joker to the right. God card. It is the best card in the game. That's all there is to, because Blueprint can be whatever you want, and you can have it be whatever you want whenever you want. So, for example, as I select a boss blind, I could copy Burglar and get another extra 3 hands, and then I could copy DNA to create an extra card, and then I can copy Vagabond to get more tarot cards, and then when I finally want to win the round, I can go and copy Baron and get the extra points. Blueprint is the best card in the game. It is better than Brainstorm because you're able to move it more freely than you are with Brainstorm. That's all there is to it. It can be whatever you want, whenever you want. It is the card, the best one. We Joker. This Joker gains +8 chips whenever a 2 is scored. This scales very fast, and I love me some Wee Joker. I'm going to put it in the B tier. I think it's another solid option for a chip Joker if you get it early on. Mary Andy, +3 discards with -1 hand size. This can work well with something like mail and rebate to make a quick buck. But the minus hand size is brutal. I think hand size kind of rules all in this game, at least the current way that I play it. And losing that hand size for some extra discards is not really worth it. I'm going to put it in the below average tier. Oops, all sixes. Listed probabilities double. We mentioned quite a few things now that can really benefit from Oops All Sixes, and for that reason I'm going to go ahead and put it in the above average. It now makes Bloodstone God tier. It can make a few other Jokers really good. Of course, it does double negative things like glass breaking, but it also doubles some things that we haven't talked about here, like Wheel of Fortune going to 2 and 4. So Oops All Sixes, pretty solid card. You just have to be utilizing it properly. The Idol. Each played card of rank and suit gives ×2 mult. A lot of people are like, why would you ever use the Idol? Well, high score runs is why. And like I said, I'm trying to navigate and build my deck to be a specific card. If I can make my entire deck Kings of Hearts, then the Idol will always hit on Kings of Hearts. And essentially, all those cards are permanently ×2. Now, I think for just winning a run, I see the kind of logic that, maybe it's not so good. I think we split the difference here and we put it in above average B tier. I think now with Hanging Chad, it is more viable for just a normal run where you have it, navigate the deck to be a specific card, because as long as you can find the card that Idol procced and you have something like Hanging Chad, you can hit it so many times. But we also have to put some respect on its name for being a key component to some of the great high score runs there are. That's why I'm going to put it in above average. Scene Double. ×2 mult if played card has a club card and something of another suit. It's above average. If it was just ×2, if you had a club card, then it would be in the good tier. But the fact that I have to have another suit makes this card a little finicky to play with. Like, this actually doesn't work with flush builds, because if you play all clubs, then you don't have any other suits for it to work with, unless of course you have a wild card. So I guess +1 to wild cards with that. But all in all, it's a little bit hard to pilot. It's a little bit funky, but ×2 is ×2. It's a good mult Joker, and it's not that hard. Like, you're able to make it work and get that ×2. Matador, earn $8 if played hand triggers the boss blind. This could be like a god tier card, but it's so finicky, and there's some places like the hook where it doesn't trigger when I feel like it should, but it is crazy good on something like a debuff suit, where as long as you can one-shot that blind, you can basically make a free, like, $32, $40 with Matador. So for that short term, nice economic boost, it's, bottom above tier, or above average tier for me. Solid Joker. Hit the Road Jack. One of the goats in the demo, but 07 to hit the Road Jack, because I just cannot get it to work anymore. It's below average for me. It's really hard to build your deck towards something like Jacks and then discard the card that you were building towards, because if you build towards it, you probably want to play them, and it creates this really weird dynamic that it's almost similar to Obelisk, where I built my whole deck and my whole game plan towards one hand type, and now I can't play that hand type to get X mult. Well, the same thing with jacks. Well, I have 15 jacks, but I can't play them because I need to discard them to get the X mult to require it to beat the blind. Like, you can make it work. It absolutely can be a solid Joker, but I'll put an average. But I don't think as an X mult Joker, it's really the option I want, and it's especially not the rare that I want if I'm doing something like a Wraith. The duo times 2 mult for playing a pair. Very easy to get. Very solid X mult. I'm going to put that in the good tier. Same thing with the trio. It's not that hard to play a 3 of a kind. Again, times 3 mult for that is very solid. The family, times 4 mult for having 4 of a kind, is going to go in good tier. Very bottom of good tier. If I'm able to play 4 of a kind, my build is usually in a good place, but it still doesn't hurt to get times 4 mult at the end. The order, times 3 mult if your hand contains a straight, is going to go in average. If you are making a straight build, it's solid. I just don't think I want to move towards those straight builds. The tribe is a times 2 mult if you play a flush, and this is average. Like, times 2 is times 2. Again, it's some okay X mult, but it's really not that much. It's probably the weakest powered out of all these. Like, the duo is just, you can play pair after pair after pair, but the flush is, it's hard to make a flush, and you know, you're not going to be able to play 4 of them and you're still getting the same X mult as you would for just playing a pair with the duo. So it's going to go all the way in average for me. Stuntman got a little bit of a nerf. It's now only plus 250 chips, but minus 2 hand size. Still good Joker. It is one of the best chip Jokers there is. Yes, you lose a bit of hand size, which can hurt from an economic perspective if you have gold cards and the such. But in general, if you're playing high card or pairs, Stuntman is the chip Joker you want. I would argue it's, well, I'm going to put him in S tier. He's the S tier chip Joker. Invis Joker, a little bit harder to get online, maybe if you're just trying to win a run, but this did get a buff to it duplicates and is ready to proc only after 2 rounds. For that reason, it's still going to be in double S tier because you can make a copy of whatever you want. Granted, you may need to sell some things to try and push it to copy the specific Joker you want, but if you even have 2, like let's say you have a Blueprint and a Baron, then you sell everything, you make a copy of one of those, you're in a very, very good spot. Brainstorm, right underneath Blueprint. Again, similar to Blueprint, it can be whatever you want, whenever you want. Now, it's a little bit more restricted in the fact that it's only going to copy the leftmost Joker versus Blueprint can copy basically whatever. So I would prefer a Blueprint over a Brainstorm, but you are not complaining if you have either one of these. These are both pretty, goated cards. Satellite is really weird that this is such a late game Joker. It takes so much to unlock it, and it's so bad. Earn $1 at the end of the round for unique planet card use. Now, even if you used tons of unique planet cards, let's say $10 per round is solid. I still get that from Rocket from just holding Rocket for 5 boss blinds. Yeah. All in all, I guess it's not that hard to get online. I just choose not to because I think there's so many other economical options that are much easier to do. Shoot the Moon. I'm going to put a little bit more respect on Shoot the Moon's name because that plus 13 mult happening in hand and you're able to utilize that with steals is pretty solid. It also gets double triggered by Mime and it's still 13 mult. 13 mult is 13 mult. I mean, 1 queen is equal to basically Abstract Joker here, so I do think Shoot the Moon is a top tier above average Joker. Driver's License times 3 mult if you have at least 16 enhanced cards. This is right up there with Blackboard and Card Sharp. It's basically like either, yes, I'm going to have 16 enhanced cards right now or very shortly, or no, that's just, I played a run where I did no tarrowing and it's not going to happen, so you just ignore it. All in all, I think it's a good tier Joker. Cartomancer creates a tarot card when the blind is selected. Above average. Very easy, reliable way to get 1 tarot card. It's nowhere near as good as something like a Vagabond. And, actually I'm going to put an average. I'm going to put it right next to 8 Ball because honestly on average, if you have 8 Ball, you're probably going to get 1 tarot card from your 4 normal 8s. Cartomancer, you probably get 1 from not having to do anything. So, they're similar. Nowhere near as good as Hallucination, which can give you multiple for every shop. And you go into the round with those tarot cards. Next is Astronomer. All planet cards and celestials are free. That is fantastic from an economic perspective. This is a good tier Joker. Having all planets free is great. Obviously, incredible synergy with something like Constellation. But even without Constellation, just being able to level up your hands consistently for free is great. Burnt Joker, upgrade the level of the first discard poker hand. I would say double S tier for pair and high card builds, but for almost any build, this is an S tier Joker. It's a very quick way to level up the hand that you are playing, as long as you're not playing a very hard to accomplish 5-card hand, which even then, if you've moved your deck even a little bit towards that, it can still be very viable. Bootstraps, +2 mult for every $5 you have. I'm going to put this in below average. Even as someone who has moved towards more economic builds, I just don't think the benefit is enough there at +2 mult to justify using it a ton. Next we have Canio. We're getting into the legendaries now. And Canio is a good legendary, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely not the best. You can have really solid X-Molt. You just have to delete some face cards. I'm going to put it in the above average tier of Jokers. It's one of the best X-Molt Jokers. Oh, sorry. I'm putting it in the good tier. The good tier. It's a very good X-Molt Joker. You're a little disappointed considering what you could be getting out of the legendaries, but it still gets put there. Next, we have Tribulate, absolute S tier Joker, right up there next to Brainstorm and Blueprint. ×2 mult for every king and queen played. You pair that with Sock and Buskin, red seals, you're on your way to the moon. But if you get a Tribulate, it's basically over and you've won your run as long as you haven't deleted all your kings and queens already. York got a buff in the last patch, and now it starts at ×1 mult and gives you ×1 mult every 23 cards discarded. This is solid and it gets online a lot easier. I actually think Canio is still a little bit better. I'm going to put it in kind of the middle ground of good A tier Jokers. Chakot disables the effect of every boss blind. Again, comparing it to what you could be getting out of legendaries, it's very disappointing. But all in all, it's still a bottom tier above average Joker. Disabling every boss blind can lead to a pretty easy victory. And then per KO is right up there next to Tribulate, Brainstorm, and Blueprint. Creating negative copies of consumable cards is a very easy way to win a run. It is also a very easy way to get super high scores, and it's one of the requirements to get an infinite run going. So, this is my updated tier list for post-patch, post 200 hours in the game, post a bunch of gold stakes, post a Balatro Invitational Tournament, an E90 unseeded score. Let me know in the comments what you think, where you agree, where you disagree. And that's going to wrap this one up. If you like it, drop a like. If you did not, you dislike, hit subscribe if you've been enjoying the content. And remember, don't end up like Murphy.
I'm not subscribed to Zaino on YouTube. And I'm sorry. There we go. We're subscribed. Subscription ad.